Hello, buddy. Welcome back to the show. I've got my brother Tim here, and how long's it been since we've seen each other?
It's been a while. It's probably been
5 years?
at least 5, because it might have been 6, 7, because I was in Minnesota before you left for the Philippines.
Yeah.
So
I'm 68. You're 58?
59 now.
You're 59 now, okay. Well, you were always the good child. We had 5 kids in the family. You're the one, as far as I remember, you never got in trouble. You always got good grades. You never wrecked the car, did you?
No.
No, never wrecked the car. I remember the police never came to the house looking for you, like they did for some of us. We won't mention names. But you're always successful too. I remember right out of college, you got a really good job, right? Who were you working for?
I worked for Quaker Oats, and then I went to 3M Company.
And so you climbed the executive ladder and always successful. How old were you when you bought your first house?
I was 22,
Jeez.
I think.
Wow, 22? You bought your first house at 20?
I'm pretty sure, yeah. Because I had started with 3M, I'd moved to Kansas City, I was living in an apartment, and I decided instead of paying rent for an apartment, I bought a house. I bought my first house. It was $98,000. It was a split-level duplex in Olathe, Kansas.
Wow.
And I remember back then, my interest rate was 9.75%. So
Wow.
It's kind of funny. You look at interest rates today here in America. It's 8% interest rates now. But yeah, that was my first house.
When I was 22, I remember I got my Sears card. I was so excited. And so, if I remember right, correct me if I'm wrong, but with that job, you got a company car. Was it a Taurus?
Yep. Yeah. Good memory. Yeah. Ford Taurus.
A long time ago.
Yeah.
How long ago was that?
Shoot. I started with 3M in 1988.
Wow.
In 88, yeah. And worked there for 31 years.
31 years, my God.
Yeah.
But you climbed the corporate ladder and all that. That must have been hard.
No, it was good. I mean, I was very fortunate. I was very blessed. It was a great company, great people. Had I had a very fortunate, blessed career. In a big company like that, it's always hard to move up. And, a lot of it is, hard work, but there's also some luck involved and, being connected to the right people, right business at the right time. And so things worked out really well for me, and was able to retire from 3M and move on to another career, and it's been great.
You got your master's degree while you were at 3M?
Yeah, I did. I got my MBA. They paid for my school, so that was great. Back in those days, you couldn't go up in the management unless you had your master's degree.
Oh,
MBA.
really?
Yeah, so
wow.
That's why I got it. I mean, I really couldn't move up into management until I got my MBA back in those days. So,
did you ever, while you were working there, have a boss or somebody that's like several levels above you, and they knew that they were less qualified than you for the job?
Not so much. I mean, there are so many very talented people at 3M. They hired very high quality people. I was very fortunate. I worked with a lot of great people during my career. You'd run into people that were, maybe not the most competent boss or leader, but it was never to the point where people are like, oh wow, you're better than them or anything like that.
So you got 2 children, you got twins, and boy and a girl, and they're both highly successful and graduated from college already. But you waited a long time to get pregnant, right? Wasn't it an ordeal for you guys?
Yeah, we tried. We had a tough time getting pregnant, and so it was stressful at times, and then we were fortunate enough to finally then get pregnant. We did some different, help through fertility clinics and stuff, and then when we found out Paula was pregnant, we were obviously very excited. And then when we finally went and did the ultrasound, and they told us it was twins, I literally about fell out of my chair.
Oh, like, oh my God. A boy and a girl too. Was like,
well, that was the next thing. So then we went back later when, you can tell the sex.
Yeah.
And then when we found out it was a boy and a girl, and then I was like, victory,
Unbelievable.
Perfect,
Yeah.
So.
And they're such cool kids too.
Yeah, they're best friends, which is really cool. My children are really close to each other, and they're great kids.
Now, are they living in the same state now, or where are they living now?
No, in fact, they just had their first birthday apart since they've been alive.
Oh, wow.
October 3rd. And so Taylor's in Dallas right now working with AT&T. And then Jacob is at Stanford. He's getting his master's degree in mathematical and computational engineering and finance.
Wow. Impressive. Yeah, you were telling me off camera earlier that you wanted him to understand investing, and you started teaching him about the stock market when he was what, junior high school or?
Middle school.
Middle school.
Yeah.
And so
6th grade.
He's been very successful investing. That's really good to know that stuff when you're young, because I think so many kids today, they go to school and they never know anything about finance. Like I remember when I went to college and my mother gave me a check to pay for my books. I didn't know how to fill out a check. I'd never filled out a check before. I'd never seen a checkbook. I didn't know how it worked. And of course, there weren't any credit cards back then really, but I didn't have a clue how finances work. It's so useful to teach your son that. It gives them a real head start.
Even in colleges, they don't really teach you the stock market. There's some schools that have programs now, but for the most part, they don't teach kids at a young age how to invest, how the market works. The stock market it's almost a form of gambling, right? I mean, obviously you're buying into a company and you research that company and you look at their financials and you see that it's a real well-run company and they're growing and good products and it's a good investment. But it's even like 3M. 3M stock went all the way up to, it was at $240 a share, and today it's trading at like 85.
Really?
Yeah. So the company's had some really tough times.
Well, was a lot of your pension in that money?
I had exited out of all of it.
Oh,
so
that's good.
I got out,
Got out in time.
Yeah. So.
So one thing I wanted to ask you, I know before you didn't want to talk about it, but the hardest thing I think you've ever gone through in your life was you were diagnosed with cancer. And how old were you when that happened?
I was, oh man, I have to look back.
You were young.
I always try to forget about it. I mean, my kids were 2 years old. So to put it in perspective.
Were you in your 30s?
I was 35.
God, that's young.
34. And so what happened is I had, I was one of those guys that I was pretty fit. I was doing triathlons, so I was pretty fit, and I'd hated going to the doctor.
You never smoked. You're never a drinker. You were always healthy.
Yeah, I mean, back in those days,
you were an athlete.
I didn't eat red meat. And so for me to get sick like that was kind of like one of those things that just was.
What was the symptoms like? I mean, you're a perfectly healthy guy. You're doing triathlons, and what was like? Did it just happen all at once, or was it slowly, or?
No, it was going on. It was crazy when I look back at it that I had the symptoms, and I actually went to different places, and they misdiagnosed it. What
were the symptoms?
So, like, I had the first thing was I had difficulty breathing. Like, so I'd work out and I'd get like really winded, and I'd have trouble breathing.
Yeah.
And I went to a cardiologist, and they, ran some tests, and they said, no, you're fine, But they never did an x-ray or anything.
Wow.
So they didn't pick up that I had a softball-sized tumor in my chest. And then the other thing I started getting these lumps on my scalp, and they were like little, like lima bean lumps on my scalp, and they started freaking me out, because I was like, God, man, it's like, what are these bumps on my head? And so I went to a dermatologist.
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, those are pilar cysts, I mean, those are something that, just kind of happen, and, we can cut them, and they kind of pop out. And I'm like, oh, well, these things are freaking me out. So he tried to remove one, and he was like, I'll send this in. And so, a couple weeks go by, and I was having trouble sleeping because I was having trouble breathing, and then it was really sore in the back of my skull. And I told Paula one night, I just said, I'm just going to go to the emergency room. I've got an infection or something. There's something going on. And so I went in, and they, ran some tests and stuff, and then they took a couple x-rays, chest x-ray. And by this time, I'd been in this emergency room, Austin Medical Center. We were in Austin, Texas at the time. And they moved me into, it was 3 a.m, finally. I'd been there all night. Got there at about probably 11:30, 12 o'clock at midnight. And so they moved me to a room about 3 a.m, and I thought it was strange because I'd been sitting in the hallway the whole time. And this is after blood tests and some x-rays.
So they still haven't told you anything?
They haven't told me anything. So they moved me in this room, and I'm in this room for maybe 10 minutes. And then a doctor walks in, and he said, well, Mr. Thornton, we've run the tests, and we came back, and you have lymphoma. I'm like, what is that? What do you mean? What's lymphoma? He goes, you have cancer. I'm like, what?
Wow.
I said, what? Are you kidding? No, that can't be right. And he goes, no, sir. He goes, I've made an appointment with an oncologist at 9 o'clock this morning. Wow. So I would like, you to stay here, and, we'll have you set up with the oncologist in the morning. I said, I gotta go.
You gotta go? What do you mean you gotta go?
I said, I'm not staying here. I've gotta leave. And so I left. So I went and got in my car, and I'm driving home, and I'm just like freaking out. Paula's probably thinking, what's going on? And so Paula lost her mom.
Paula's his wife.
She lost her mom to breast cancer when she was 8.
Oh my God.
And so she always had this fear, right, of, cancer and losing people to cancer. So I'm like, my whole thing, I'm like, I've got twin 2-year-olds at home. I was just diagnosed with cancer, and my wife, it's one of her biggest fears. So I'm driving home, and I look, I'm on empty.
Oh God.
So I'm like, I had to stop at a gas station because I couldn't make it home. I'm getting gas in the car, and I called Dad. So I called Dad at, I don't know, it was like 3:30 in the morning, and he answers the phone. He said, what's wrong? What's wrong? And I'm crying, and I'm like, Dad, I got cancer. He's like, what? And he's like, no, that can't be right. I'm like, I've got a meeting with the oncologist. So then, long story short, I go home. Paula freaks out. We're like, we stayed up all, and went to the doctor, tried to find somebody to help us with the kids. I went to the oncologist at 9 for that 9 o'clock appointment, and they ran more tests. So they did a biopsy in my neck. They did I think they did a bone marrow aspiration later on. But they, what happened is every test came back bad news. They just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And so they biopsied me, and it turned out to be T-cell lymphoma. And then they did a bone marrow biopsy, and it turned out to be in my bone marrow. I had a 38% bone marrow blast.
That's supposed to be painful too, that treatment, isn't it?
Yeah, at that time, I guess I don't even remember it because I had so many of those, over time. But what happened is they basically said, you're stage 4, and if you don't start treatment like now, you've got 2 to 4 months to live.
Oh my God. I had no idea it was that bad. Jesus.
So I'm like, we couldn't believe it. Paul and I are just,
You got to be in shock.
you don't know even how to handle that, comprehend it. So what ended up happening is they said, we can't treat you here. We can't help you. You need to go to MD Anderson. And so at the time, they saved my life because MD Anderson in Houston, Texas is probably one of the best cancer medical, hospitals in the world.
And you had excellent insurance with the company.
And I was very fortunate to be at 3M. They took very good care of me. But what happens is in Texas, there's a law that if it's a hospital-to-hospital transfer, they have to take you. So if I would have left that hospital and gone home, and then I would have got on a wait list to get in MD Anderson. And I could have waited. I could have waited who knows how long to get in, right?
Oh, wow.
But because they transferred me directly from Austin Medical Center in an ambulance to MD Anderson, and they got me on treatment immediately. And I ended up seeing a doctor. Her name is Dr. Deborah Thomas, and she happened to be the world expert on acute lymphoblastic lymphoma, which was my diagnosis. And they saved my life. I mean, and
but it wasn't an easy thing. How many years did you go through?
I went through chemo for 2.5 years, 3 years total.
Now, were you working during that time, or you just stopped working?
Well, what ended up happening is because I was so far along, they wanted me there. So we ended up moving into an apartment in Houston. Mm-hmm. Mom and Dad came and took our kids, and they took them to Connie's.
That's right, I remember that. My sister.
So my sister, Connie, took our children. So I didn't see my kids for 45 days. I went into that doctor's appointment at 9 o'clock, and I never went home.
Wow. Wow.
So, I mean, I literally stayed in Houston and never went home. I didn't see my kids again for probably, it was like 2 months.
Gee, that must have been hard when they're little that too.
And then I started, when I started chemo, immediately my hair came out, So I shaved my head and the hair started coming out. And it was tough. I mean, the first couple months of chemotherapy, because it's all intravenous chemo, they put a port in my chest. And I was getting hospitalized chemotherapy. So I did what's called the hyper-CVAD at MD Anderson. And so I literally was in an IV, and they would, I was under full, they'd monitor my blood and heart rate and everything. Literally for 6-7 days straight, I'd be on chemotherapy. Then they would release me, and I'd go back, and then I'd come back and forth for testing. And I was getting like bone marrow biopsies and other tests. They did a intrathecal, so I ended up having to get, it was not in my spinal column. So they were trying to prevent it from getting in my spinal column. Because once that happens, your mortality rate goes way up. And so they started doing intrathecal chemotherapy, which they would do a spinal tap, and they pull your spinal fluid out, and they put chemo in it and inject it back in. And it would just, I was just a vegetable. I mean, I was in a wheelchair, and, but when I looked through it, the whole thing for me during this whole time is that I cannot let my children grow up without a father.
That's what got you through it.
Yeah.
Wow.
I wanted to see my kids grow up,
You pulled it off, didn't you?
It took us so long to happen,
What was it, like 3 years?
What's that?
The chemotherapy.
Yeah, it was 2.5 of the hyper-CVAD, and then I did maintenance chemo for another year. So I think in total it was actually 3.5 years.
What was it like that first day where chemo's done, you're finished, and you know that that's done?
You mean the last day?
The last day.
So that's the scary part. Well, I shouldn't say scary, but it was bittersweet because I had all these plans, because I had been going to the same clinic to get my treatment, and all the nurses know you. They get to know you. You get to know them because you're there. I mean, been going there for almost 3 years. And so when I get to ring the bell, one of the traditions that they had at Austin Medical Center, where I got a lot of my maintenance chemo, is they have you ring the bell. And then they all sign a plaque. All the nurses and the doctors sign it, and it's like a big celebration.
Wow.
And so I was planning to literally have people to our house, have a party, invite them all, because I was so thankful. Yeah. I mean, these people that work in hospitals, especially in oncology, they're amazing people.
Yeah, they're saints.
Amazing people. Because it's tough. I mean, it's a tough job. But so when I rang the bell, that month I finished, Paula started chemotherapy.
Oh my God.
At the same clinic.
Your wife she had what, breast cancer?
She was diagnosed with breast cancer.
My God.
Now the good news was we caught it really early with her. But she started her treatment essentially the month I finished. And so the hard part was at 3M at the time, I mean, and my neighbors and friends, I looked pretty bad. I mean, I looked like a concentration camp survivor. I mean, I was very jaundiced. I was very thin. I didn't have any hair on my face, or I looked like somebody who,
like you were dying.
Yeah, I looked like Walking Dead. And so people knew my cancer battle. I mean, they watched it. They knew I was sick. And so when Paula got diagnosed, we kept it to ourselves. We didn't tell anybody.
Oh, really?
We didn't. There was a few people that knew, because we didn't want people to feel sorry for us. It's like, God, you guys. It was bad enough what I was going through, and so she lost her hair. She wore a wig. We got a wig that looked like her hair, and it was funny. We were at the grocery store one day, and one of the ladies goes, "God, Paul, I really like your hair." Like, well, who's doing your hair? And it's like it was a wig, and so we pulled it off. Actually,
but that's just it just seems so unfair. Like, you go through something like that, and then boom, your wife gets it the day that you're, finish your chemo. I mean, my God.
Yeah, it was.
It's like the life of Job.
It was rough times, but it's funny now.
You must appreciate every day, though, now.
Oh, we appreciate so much. And the craziest thing for us today is, like, I've been very successful in my career, and we're both very healthy now. I mean, our kids have been really successful, and so people are like, oh man, you guys are so lucky.
Yeah.
But they don't realize some of the times that we went through that people are like, God, I wouldn't want to be them. I mean, God, it sucks to be them, because we just had a very rough life at certain times. There were points in our.
But it sounded like it was like, what, 5 years of just turmoil?
Yeah, it was probably.
Maybe longer.
I look at my recovery. Even though I stopped chemo, when I finished, it took me probably almost 2.5 years to get my muscle tone back, because I had developed osteopenia.
What's that?
Which is thinning of the bones, like it's pre-osteoporosis.
Wow.
And so what had happened, because I was doing prednisone, I was doing 200 milligrams of prednisone every month for 5-6 days. It was part of my chemo treatment. And I did that for 3 years. And so that high dose of prednisone, it causes thinning of the bones. And so what ended up happening is I went in, they said, you're pre-osteoporosis. They had to put me on these calcium pills and all this stuff. And I started reading, like, how do I build bone density? And the best thing to do to build bone density is weight-bearing exercise. So I started going to the gym at our club, and I literally started out with, like, 2.5, 3 pound dumbbells.
The little pink ones?
Yeah, like literally. I mean, because that's how weak I was. I mean, I could barely even walk upstairs. That's how weak I was.
Wow.
And so it took me like almost 2.5 years to really get muscle tone back and build myself back.
Because you were doing triathlons before this all happened.
Yeah, I mean, I did triathlons for probably almost 6 years.
Jeez.
And so then I went from being super active to nothing. And that's what was hard when I was doing chemotherapy. And it probably helped me. I was in pretty good shape at the time when I was diagnosed. But I would walk the rounds at MD Anderson. Like, I'd carry my pole around, and I'd just literally walk all over as many places as I was allowed to go in that hospital, just so I couldn't sit in my room and just sit there.
Oh, God.
But yeah, I mean, it just seems like a bad dream, the whole thing.
It's like that old saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, so.
Yeah. And, it can either, back when I was sick, I was not a good patient. I'll admit that. I was, there were times where I was in a lot of pain and I was just cranky, and the prednisone is like
it's a steroid, isn't it?
It's a steroid, and it would set you off. Like, I would be hair trigger, And so, Paula is a saint to put up with me and be able to deal through my treatment. But then I didn't realize how blessed I am with my marriage and my spouse until she was sick.
Yeah.
Because now I'm taking care of her, and it was so hard being on the other side.
Right.
And
it was easier being sick.
because I couldn't help her, and when she was hurting, when she was sick, and I just felt helpless, and it's so hard. But that'll either rip a marriage apart or it brings you stronger together. In our case, it brought us closer together. It strengthened our marriage. It didn't weaken it.
And so you get through that. Your career continues to grow at 3M, and you retire from 3M. Now you're the vice president of.
I'm the vice president, general manager at Autocar Trucks.
Of a trucking company, doing another successful career, and you've since gotten into racing, right?
Yeah, we call it high performance driving.
Yeah, but you've got 2 Porsches, right?
Yeah.
Now tell me about these Porsches, because I don't know anything about them.
I've got what they call a 991.1 911 Turbo S Cabriolet. So it's a 2016, and then I've got.
Now, is that the daily driver, or is that the racer?
No, I don't have. Neither of them are really daily drivers. I drive that Infiniti as my daily driver, but I'm fortunate enough to have cars that I can drive for fun, weekend drivers, and then I have a track car that I track, or mainly drive it on the track. I bought it to run it on the track.
What is that?
And that's a 991.2 GT3, 911 GT3, and that's 2018. And so I drive that. We'll do some like fun drives with the Porsche Club or something, and I'll drive that, on the roads. But mainly I use it and I drive it on the track at Barber Motorsports Park in Birmingham.
How fast do you go?
I mean, I mainly drive it on Barber. That track is kind of more of a technical track. It's 2.3 miles. It's 16 turns, and so it's the longest straightaway. I mean, I get to 130, top speed. But as soon as you're at that speed, you're on the brake really hard because you're going.
Is it manual transmission?
No, it's a PDK. Both my cars are PDK.
What does that mean?
It's just a Porsche's transmission, automatic transmission. But it's the transmission in those cars is actually better than a manual. I mean, it's faster than what you could ever shift. But you can turn it to manual mode. I could drive it as a manual if I want to.
Now with the paddles?
Yeah, with paddle shifts. Yeah. But I'm very blessed to be able to do this as kind of a hobby, and I've made a lot of friends. And I got into instructing. I went through the Motor Safety Foundation training course program, and then I got instructor certified through Porsche Club of America. And then I instruct at different clubs, Chin Motorsports and Just Track It, and for Porsche Club. And I essentially ride shotgun with drivers who want to learn how to drive on the track.
Well, do they ever scare the shit out of you?
Oh yeah, yeah. I had a doctor who's in a GT3 touring, and super nice guy. But it's a high horsepower car, and he came up on turn 4, and he came. It's a blind hill, and it's kind of got a little bit of a pitch to it. And if you come off the throttle at the top of the hill, the car gets light. And a guy did a point by, and he was trying to pass him, which I told him not to pass. And when he did that, he came off the gas, and the car got light, and we slid sideways and slid sideways and slid sideways. And I'm like, oh crap, we're in the wall.
And how fast were you going when that happened?
He was probably doing 95.
Oh God.
But he straightened it out. He saved it. And so then the first thing you do, because after that incident, you're going into turn 5, which is a strong hairpin. And so my job as an instructor, the first thing I said, okay, focus on the turn, get right, watch your, start braking into the turn, remember brake. And because you don't want him thinking about what just happened.
Right.
Because you're on a track, there's other cars.
Oh, there's other cars out there.
Oh, yeah.
So how many cars might be out there?
In that session, I think we were with Chin at that time.
That's a lot of cars.
There could be 30 cars out on the track.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do they ever crash into each other?
Oh, yeah. There's accidents every weekend.
Every weekend?
Yeah, there's always somebody that has an accident. I mean, it's never, and you know, I haven't seen anyone really get hurt since I've been there. I mean, I know it's happened, but you know, it's pretty safe. I mean,
Have you had close calls yourself?
I've had a few, you know, but I, knock on wood, haven't not had any accidents. I've gone off the track before. But you know, all the clubs are very structured in your ability to move up. And there's different run groups. So like when you're at a novice level, you're out there with other novice drivers. So you know, the track speeds tend to be slower. I now run with the advanced run groups. And so I'll be out there, and it could be professional drivers out there. So there'll be race teams out there some weekends, you know, and so you're out there on the track with professional drivers that are you know, practicing.
Wow.
So it's cool. It's a rush, you know.
Wow. So in your career, you've traveled all over the world, and you've been to Asia, you've been to the Philippines.
Yep. Many times.
A lot of my subscribers want to know what my brothers think about. What did you think when you heard that your brother was moving to the Philippines? Were you in shock? I mean, you think that's typical of Mark? I mean, what were your thoughts on that?
Well, for me, I wasn't as shocked because you and I had talked about different places that you would retire to. And you were looking at cost of living, and you know, we'd talked about Thailand, and I think we even talked about what was it, South America? What was it?
Like Mexico, Brazil.
Not Belize. Oh shit, I'm forgetting the name of this country that you would look. And then you were looking somewhere in Europe, and like.
Well, I looked at actually Ukraine, and I looked at Portugal, and I looked at Albania.
Albania, that's what it was, Albania, because I remember I looked that one up. I'm like, Mark, it gets pretty cold there, you know? Like, so the Philippines, when you said the Philippines, like, hey, that's probably a great place.
Well, you'd been there, right?
I've been there. The people are great. I love the Philippines. The people are super friendly.
Didn't you have a girlfriend in the Philippines back in high school?
I did, actually. My first love was Filipino. So
that's what I thought.
Yeah, her father was was a physician in the Philippines, and they moved to the United States. And so her mom was American, but her dad was Filipino. So, but yeah, no, I love the Philippines. The only thing is you know, the big thing is you go there, they want you to do balut.
Oh, no way.
I'm not a fan.
My wife doesn't even do balut. No, I don't do it, no way. If you don't know what balut is, it's a goose egg, and then it's fertilized, and so it's like a couple weeks before it hatches, so it's a full-grown chicken side, and they boil it alive, and then they crack it open with vinegar and salt and eat it. You've got like the head of the bird and the beak and everything, and so it's quite repulsive.
Kind of crunchy. It's got the bones.
Yeah, but fortunately, my wife does not want balut, and I don't eat it either. So
yeah.
So you're okay with it. That's good.
Yeah, no, I think Philippines.
Actually, most of the family's been okay with it too. You know,
there's so many beautiful places in the Philippines. You know, all throughout Southeast Asia. You know, there's so many, you know, just islands, and people don't realize. Most people, you know, associate a lot of the major countries, even America, with the big cities.
Right.
You know, with Manila or Jakarta or, you know, New York City, or San Francisco or LA. They don't ever get out in the rural areas like where you live, where it's so beautiful and clean and just, you know, it's just a whole different experience.
Very simple life. Yeah. You know? I went to Manila and went to BGC, and it was like Miami. Yeah. There was Rolls-Royce dealerships there, and big streets and traffic lights and everything. You know, very modern. But you know, that's not what I wanted. You know, I like being where I'm at.
And traffic. Yeah. Lots of traffic and jeepneys.
Yeah, jeepneys, and tricycles. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the one thing I like about Manila is the jeepneys. It's, you know, for those of you who've never been to Manila, I think it's something that's truly iconic about that city. And because you'll never see jeepneys anywhere in the world other than in Manila.
No, they got in the Philippines. They got them everywhere.
But
we got them in Negros Oriental. Got them everywhere. But it's like.
But you won't see at least for me, the population of them, and they're so unique and decorated. Yeah. And
it's like a big school bus, you know, with bench seats in it, and you know, windows. It's like totally open, but it's real cheap. It's like 25 pesos, like 50 cents. To just hop on it, and they're pretty much how the regular people get around if you don't have a motorbike. So, yeah, I was on one actually in Bahal. Had internet, a Jeep with internet.
Yeah, really?
The code, yeah, free internet while you're on the
Wow.
Jeep thing, But no, yeah, it's good. But yeah, I've been back here and just for 1 week in America, and everybody was telling me that it's changed so much and nobody's happy and the inflation and this and that, and it's been fine. I haven't noticed any big difference when I was here 5 years ago. I mean, I don't remember what prices were of things, but it seems like, it's good. You live in Alabama, right?
Yep.
Which is a great place to live.
Yeah, we love it there. It's.
You think you'll stay there forever?
I think so. I mean, we really like it. We've kind of settled in, made a lot of friends there. We're 4 hours from the beach. There's hills and mountains nearby. There's lots of lakes and parks, and so cost of living is very reasonable. And most people don't realize it, but Birmingham is like a culinary city. So there's lots of restaurants, and if you're into the bar scene, there's really cool bars, and so we love it. I mean, we
because you lived in Minnesota for a long time, right? When you were at 3M.
Off and on 13 years.
Really, that long?
Yeah. Lived in Austin, Texas for 10 years.
Austin is nice.
Yeah.
We visited you there. Yeah, Minnesota's just so darn cold.
Yeah, the winters are tough. But the people that grew up there, have been born there, will never leave. They love it.
Yeah.
They love the lakes, they love the outdoors, and there's some really cool things about Minnesota. But us having all of our family in the South, now, in fact, we drove here from Birmingham.
By the way, thank you for driving up to see me. I appreciate that. It's very nice of you.
Hey, I wouldn't miss it, man.
Yeah.
But before, when we were in Minnesota, I had to get on a plane and then fly and then rent a car. And it was so hard to visit family. And I've told some friends of mine that now that we live in Birmingham, I've seen Eric and Mom more in 1 year than I had the previous 5 years.
Wow.
And so that's huge for me to be able to see family and just be in driving distance.
Well, so I know you got a great career right now, and everything's going wonderful for you. But financially, you could do whatever you want right now. Have you thought about? When do you think you'll retire? Do you think it'd be a year, 2 years, 5 years, or have you got any plans there? Or thought about it, or?
Yeah, I've thought about it. I mean,
because you can do whatever you want.
I'm actually one of those people that I don't want to say scared. That maybe that's not the right word, but I'm somewhat have a hesitation on being retired because I like being busy. I like what I do. I like the people I work with. It's fun. I just like being busy. And I have this fear that if I'm not working, then I'm going to struggle to find things to do.
Right.
It's easy to find something to do on a weekend and be busy, but to be busy every day, so we'll see.
You work long hours. You said you're at the office at 7:30 in the morning and you're home at like 5 o'clock at night sometimes.
Yeah,
so
6 o'clock at night.
So that's a lot of hours.
Yeah.
I would think also when you've gone through something like you have with cancer and everything and, survived, that you want to make the most of every single day and enjoy every single day. And if you love your job, that's great. But,
I guess, throughout my career, I've always gotten, it's not necessarily I'm working for my own self-interest. I obviously, everybody likes to make money, but at least at 3M in the company I'm at now, where I get the most gratification is seeing people I work with or work for me succeed and grow in their careers. And so
not a problem,
that's why, I like seeing others be successful. And so, I've hired people in my current company, and I feel a sense of obligation in ensuring that their success and company is successful and they can continue to provide for their families.
But that can continue on forever. Yeah. There's no end game to that. There's no exit strategy there.
Yeah. Well, in my other job, I actually groomed somebody to replace me. So that was how I think it helped me succeed at 3M is I always made sure I had somebody that I was grooming or, mentoring that could replace me.
Right.
And some people are threatened by that. Like you want, to be irreplaceable. But my philosophy always was, I want somebody to be able to take over for me, especially when you go through your cancer situation, things aren't permanent in life. That always wanted to have somebody ready that could actually take over for you.
Well, I think the company would appreciate something like that you put the company first, Well, anyway, thank you so much, Tim, for coming down to see me, and I really appreciate you sitting down and being on my show.
Yeah, thanks.
And I'm sure everybody's going to enjoy hearing your story. So thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for subscribing, and we'll see you next time. Bye.